We're back for our daily college basketball best bets here on Monday, January 19th. Yesterday, not our best day. Maryland kicks off the day with a victory. Army lays an egg against American University. Charlotte goes on the road and picks up a big win, and then Tulane loses, and then San Francisco doesn't cover by a half point. You know, if they didn't let Wazoo take a 10-point lead on them for most of the second half, maybe we would have been fine, but we don't cover by a half point. Something that has struck us multiple times this year, the not covering by the half. It is what it is. It sucks. But anyways, folks, we're going to try to bounce back today. We've got games all day long, with today being Martin Luther King Day. So let's make the most of the slate all day college basketball today here on the 19th. Now, folks, before we get into the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more daily college basketball best bets here on the channel. Later today, we're going to have our NBA best bets on the channel as well. So make sure to join us for that, as well as our NCAA, our college football championship game predictions. That is tonight. We're going to crown a national champion from Miami, Florida, as the Miami Hurricanes take on the Indiana Hoosiers. I cannot wait. We are very pumped for that game. The two teams I said back in August that were going to make the national championship game are in the Natty, so go check out that full prediction linked in the description down below. That should be cinema. As well as on Greedo Plays MMA or UFC 324 predictions. Justin Gagey takes on Paddy Pimblett for the UFC vacant or interim lightweight championship. Go make sure to check out that video linked down below on Greedo Plays MMA, and go subscribe to Greedo Plays MMA if you have not yet. Okay, on to the first of our 5 best bets to kick off the new week. We're starting things off in the American East. Let's go to some low-level college basketball. We couldn't have it any other way to kick off the day, as the Maine Black Bears are going to be hosting the New Hampshire Wildcats in Memorial Gymnasium. I am going with the Maine Black Bears to win the basketball game, and I actually think it's kind of an easy play. Minus 120 for a 3-16 basketball team, I know does not seem the most appealing. I think they should be able to handle New Hampshire here. The Wildcats have not played in a while. They last played 9 days ago at UMBC in a game in which they were winning. New Hampshire's up 1 point against a decent UMBC Retrievers team, a team whose record, I think, even though it's not great, is better than what they actually are. Anyways, New Hampshire, by the way, who's 4-12 and 0-3 in the American East, go to UMBC and ultimately lose by 1 point. They're up by 1, though, as they hit a big mid-range shot with 8 seconds to go. UMBC proceeds to get fouled at about the 3-point line on a reach-in, or on a blocking foul. I don't remember if it was a blocking or foul or a reach-in foul. UMBC hits 2 straight free throws. New Hampshire gets a desperate heave to try to win the game. You know, that falls short for the Wildcats, and ultimately UMBC wins it. But a clutch loss for the Wildcats trying to pick up their first win in American East play this season. Prior to that, there are 2 games in the AM East, a 19-point loss at home against the Catamounts of Vermont, and they lost on the road to NCAA, who's been playing actually fairly well so far this season. But this is a New Hampshire team that is 0-3. They've only picked up 2 victories all year long against Division I schools. That's Boston University in overtime and Stonehill. They are yet to win on the road all year long. That includes losses to Harvard, Clemson, George Mason, Providence, Fairfield, Dartmouth, St. Louis, Nebraska, and then obviously the other two AM East road losses in both NJIT and UMBC. As for Maine, I know their record's actually worse throughout the entire year, obviously comparing the 4-12 Wildcats to the 3-16 Black Bears, but the Black Bears have some momentum as they did go on the road and upset the Highlanders of NJIT, giving New Jersey Institute of Technology their only loss so far in AM East Conference play. Again, it was to Maine. Maine on the road, goes to NJIT and upsets the Highlanders, beating them by 4 points. And as a whole, I don't think they've played that badly in AM East play. They've just come up a little bit short. First game in AM East play, playing the Bryant Bulldogs, losing by 5. They go to UMBC and lose by 7. The victory on the road at NJIT, and then a loss at Vermont to the Catamounts by 5, and now they're going to welcome in New Hampshire. I think it's a very manageable spot for Maine, who, by the way, is the home team here. I think this is a very good spot for them. They, too, like the Wildcats, if they win against Boston University. The difference, the game for the Black Bears was actually, it was a road game, and they won by 10 points. It didn't have to go to overtime. But I like Maine a lot in this spot. They're at home. I know their non-con didn't go their way, and they lost some games that maybe should have been manageable, and games that they probably should have won down the stretch. Siena, Longwood, Quinnipiac. There's one more that was fairly competitive down the stretch that I'm blanking on right now. But there were a lot of games that they could have had and they just didn't play well in the clutch. I think this team has momentum because they just beat NJIT on the road. Yes, a loss to Vermont sucks, but they return home for the first time in AM East play, and hell, for the first time in general since January 3rd, and they're taking on a New Hampshire team who is on the third consecutive game of a road trip. Now, obviously, this is not like an NBA-style road trip where New Hampshire's just been going from city to city. Obviously, they went to New Jersey, they went to Baltimore, played NJIT and UMBC, and back to, or, they played those 2 games in 3 days, or 3 days as a whole, and obviously they've been off now for 9 consecutive games going into this one in Maine, but still, they haven't played a home game in a while. You're back on the road yet again before a 3-game home stretch against Binghamton, UAlbany, and UMass Lowell. But I like Maine quite a bit in the spot. They're at home. I think these teams are fairly evenly matched. I would argue the Black Bears are actually the better basketball team. And I think the best player on the court is TJ Beal. TJ Beal, the big for Maine. He's going to operate as that 4/5 type player for this team. Senior forward from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, averaging 12.5 points per game this season, but he has really turned up in AM East play. I mean, hell, this team played a Division II school, Maine did, prior to kicking off American East play, and Beal scored 4 points. But as soon as AM East play starts, my goodness, 20 points against the Bryant Bulldogs, 27 points against UMBC on the road in 36 minutes, 21 points against NJIT, and then 12 points against Vermont. But again, for the most part, Beal has been massive for this team, and the rebounding numbers too. He gets into the double digits against UMBC. Beal has averaged 12 and 5 so far this year, but when you look at AM East play specifically, I mean, he's averaging 20 plus points and about 7 rebounds per game. He's been absolutely massive for what Maine's done so far in American League or AM East play. Keelan Steele's their other somewhat decent scorer. He scored 17 in the Vermont game, with Beal not really showing up. He averages 8.5 points per game, a senior out of Ontario, Canada. Again, all 3 years for him have been with Maine. For Beal, played 2 years at SEMO, and now is transferred, of course, to being a Maine Black Bear. As for New Hampshire, my goodness, not the team that beat NJIT was Maine, obviously. New Hampshire here. Got a couple guys. Keyshawn Robinson is the main player on the team. We've talked about Keyshawn Robinson before. Averages 12 points per game. Usually their main scorer, junior player, averages 12 points per game. I think Bilal Al-Shakri is not bad. Had some big shots in the loss to UMBC. Ended up dropping 18 in that game. He's a big factor for this team because Al-Shakri normally is not going to be your main scorer, but if he's able to contribute, he's going to play a massive part in the game and, influencing and swaying that game. Jack Graham averages 11 as well, but I just think, New Hampshire, you're not going to get all 3 of these guys showing up on the same night in terms of Robinson, Graham, and Al-Shakri. They're not, all 3 of them aren't going to, come out and play. I really like the direction Maine's going in. I like the way that Beal has been playing. I think Keelan Steele's been doing all right too. And overall, I do believe that Maine is able to get this game at home. We get somewhat even odds. We're going to take -120 here for the Maine Black Bears. I think it just makes sense considering they're at home and they actually have a win in the American East so far. And I don't think New Hampshire is going to get magically solved over the last 9 days and having to now go on the road for an early spot as well up in the Northeast. I know New Hampshire's in the Northeast as well, but I personally think it's just a difficult spot for the Wildcats, and I'm going to be playing the 3-16 Maine Black Bears to kick off the day. We should get a good laugh, hopefully, and some success, we shall hope, early in the day over in Orono, Maine. I'm going to go with the Black Bears picking up the victory, -120 on the money line to kick the day off. Next up, we go on to maybe the biggest game of the day. I don't know. I decided to put it in the thumbnail because who cares about a lower level? Actually, we'll talk about the next game in a second, and I'll tell you why. You'll probably get why I put this game in the thumbnail. Big matchup in the DMV, DC area as the George Washington Revolutionaries go on the road to take on the George Mason Patriots. I'm going to go with the 17-1 and 5-0 A10 team, the George Mason Patriots, to cover the 2 points at home. If you can't find 2, take 2.5. I'm seeing 2 at about -120 to -125 right now, so I'd play that if you get it. If you have to go 2.5, I think it's playable as well. But again, the official best bet is -2 for George Mason. I'm taking the Patriots here. I'm taking the Patriots at home. Obviously not going to be the biggest home court advantage in terms of travel and whatnot because George Washington obviously is right there next to George Mason. But I absolutely love the Patriots here. I understand they have not played the toughest of schedules so far. You can argue George Washington has not played the toughest of schedules either. but I don't see how George Mason does not win this game and win it by more than 2 points. This is a team that has dominated so far. I know they had some tough games in their non-con and games that were tougher than they were supposed to be. I mean, you don't want to see just a 7-point victory over the Loyola Maryland Greyhounds. You don't want to see just a 4-point win over Pennsylvania. But yet, they found ways to win. Their only loss this season is on the road at VTech. Other than that, George Mason has played great basketball. Again, some of these wins have been interesting. A 6-point win over Winthrop, a competitive win over, Loyola Maryland and Penn. But I mean, there's some good wins in there too. How about a 9-point victory against one of the better teams in the American Athletic Conference in FAU? I mean, there are good wins in there for the George Mason Patriots, and there is a reason, again, they are 5-0, in the A10 this season. As for George Washington, 12-6, but in terms of A10 play, they are 3-2. They are coming off a loss to Davidson, which, all right, you lose that at home, though, by 5 points. They also lost to both Dayton. Dayton, their only other loss so far in the conference, and we know how good the Flyers are going to be this year and have been so far. The wins for George Washington so far in the conference: Richmond on the road, LaSalle at home, and Loyola Chicago. Obviously, he's not very good at home. And if you want to compare margins against Loyola Chicago, because George Mason just played them too, yeah, the Patriots only beat them by 8 points. In all fairness, that was on the road in Chicago, and over in D.C., when the Ramblers played the Revolutionaries, George Washington did beat them by about 50 points. 45 points to be exact. So a little bit of a difference, I understand, but I think with the game being at George Mason and the momentum that the Patriots are rolling with right now, I do believe they win. And we can't just gloss over the fact that George Washington does have an L to the Delaware Blue Hens, one of the worst teams in college basketball, okay? I don't care what they have done since we picked them. I mean, they played UTEP at home, and UTEP is awful as well in the CUSA, and Delaware still lost that game. So the Blue Hens are just a bad basketball team, and yes, George Washington actually found a way to lose to the Blue Hens at home. So I can't really treat you that seriously. And in terms of non-conference, difficulty and strength of schedule, yes, George Washington has played the more difficult games compared to, I don't want to say George Mason had a weak non-conference schedule, but I mean, we saw George Washington have to play Florida. They lost the game by 10 points. They played McNeese, who's obviously one of the better mid-majors, who just lost to UT Rio Grande Valley the other day, which, make that one make sense for me one time. More on the Vaqueros, oddly enough, later in the video. But anyways, George Washington has played decent teams. They played USF. They played the Maine Black Bears, so obviously we're not really treating the Maine Black Bears as anything serious in the grand scheme of things. But you get my gist here, right? You get the gist here. George Washington has played a tougher strength of schedule, and they do get out and they score. George Mason will score too. I just don't know defensively if they're that great, but the same thing too. Like George Washington is going to give up points at the same time. I think it's a somewhat even matchup, but I do just believe with the momentum George Mason has and the fact that they are at home, even though again, the Revolutionaries are not going too far from DC on over to George Mason, I do believe that's enough for the Patriots to win the basketball game. In terms of George Mason, right, 5-0 so far in the A10 conference so far this year. Opened up A10 play with a win at LaSalle. They then beat URI at home. They go to Fordham and beat the Rams. VCU win by 6 points at home, and then a Loyola Chicago victory on the road by 8 points. Sure, they've not played the elite teams yet. They have not played a St. Louis. They've not played a Dayton. VCU, I'd argue, is a relative elite team in the conference. How they're playing Loyola Chicago today, I believe they are, and they're a 16.5-point favorite. I think that's who. I believe that's who VCU's playing today. Regardless, right? That's probably the best. They're playing St. Joe's, right? But like those are some of the better teams in the conference. And well, here you go. George Mason's going to get another opportunity tonight. Obviously, them, St. Louis, and Dayton are the 3 undefeated teams in the A10 right now. I think you can probably say Dayton feels like the best team right now. But again, we still have a lot of conference play left to go. But I like the Patriots quite a bit. I'm really big on momentum in college basketball, and they have exactly that. And I think, Corey Mincy's been playing phenomenal basketball this year, averaging 16.5 points per game. The junior point guard hasn't been the biggest breakout. It hasn't been the best guy in the A10 so far this year, I'll say. He had a much better non-conference run. He's still scoring in the double digits, but we haven't seen the big nights out of Mincy. This is a former Presbyterian guard, started every single game last season for the Blue Hose before coming on over to Virginia to play for George Mason. Riley Allen's patch is averaging 13.5 as well for this team. He's going to play that centerish type role, 6'11" forward, just dropped 23 points against Loyola Chicago, dropped 16 against VCU. Allen's patch has really been the difference maker, I'll say, so far in A10 play for this Patriots team, averaging 13.5 points per game throughout the entire season, but of course has really come on as of late. And what George Mason has done so well too, by the way, they've got Mincy from Presbyterian, they got Allen's patch from Samford. They've been able to acquire talent and really great talent from the mid-major level, and they've obviously found homes playing for George Mason. And then you include, Jahari Long, who's averaging 12 points per game, came on over from Maryland, started his career at Seton Hall. Fat Hill, who came on over from Ball State, started with the Cardinals last season. He's averaging 11 points. Again, George Mason is a proven program in the A-10, and they have found guys from really good mid-majors, and they've just come on over here and won. I like the Patriots quite a bit. As for George Washington, led in scoring by Rafael Castro. Garrett Johnson plays well too, but Castro is their guy. He's their big, and that's the matchup to watch out for. It's going to be Castro versus Riley Allen's patch. We'll see. Again, Rafael Castro is really good, averages 16 points per game, just dropped 23 against Davidson, had 26 against LaSalle, 27 against Richmond. Former Providence Friar came on over to GW last season. He's good. I think Allen's patch and Castro is going to be a matchup to watch. But overall, though, I do think George Mason's the better basketball team. So that's where we're going today. I'm going to go George Mason to take this one at home. We're going to go -2 for the Patriots. They should be able to cover. If you have to take 2.5, go ahead. But ultimately, yes, I'm going to be going with the George Mason Patriots to beat the George Washington Revolutionaries. We're going to go with the Patriots at home, -2 over the Revolutionaries. On now to our third best bet of the video. So I think you guys can understand why I didn't put this one in the thumbnail. Providence and Marquette. I mean, like, it's cool. I think there's a spot for this, and I like it enough. But again, I don't think this is like a marquee game. It's a 2-5 Big East team taking on a 1-7 Big East team. And like I was going to say earlier before I stopped myself because I just, realized I'm just going to leave it to be kind of a secret, right? These are two mid-Big East schools. Providence coming off a win. We'll take the win. What a game against Creighton. A little shaky early. We didn't know if Jason Edwards was playing or not. He did not. Yet Providence still wins the basketball game. So a big outing for them. They win it by 5 points against Creighton. They go on a big run early in that second half, and they just don't let up. Coming off that loss prior to that to Villanova, where we did have the Friars to lose. So we've been right on the last 2 Friars games. And for the Golden Eagles, it's just been a struggle so far in Big East play. Shaka Smart's team is now 1-7 in the conference, 6-13 as a whole, with their only victory being a 1-point game and a 1-point win, at home against the Xavier Musketeers. However, I believe tonight is the night Marquette's fortunes change. And you know what? We did ace the Big East a couple days ago. We had Providence winning at home against Creighton. We had DePaul covering 3 points at home against Marquette. And now we get a chance to take 2 of those teams, the 2 teams we actually, picked right on. We had Providence, we picked against Marquette. And now I'm going to flip it. I'm taking Marquette to beat Providence. But there's a reason to this. Again, this team's at home. Providence is all right. But don't forget, they're still bottom of the barrel. I just thought the matchup was really good for them at home. Marquette is in a backs against the wall type spot today. They need to win. I mean, you're going to Butler after this, and is that a manageable spot? It should be, but the way you're playing, you're probably not going to go to Butler and win. Then you get Creighton at home, which again, manageable, but we'll see. And then at Seton Hall, Butler again, Nova. There's some tough sledding ahead. And sure, they've already played a tough schedule too, but that's the Big East. There's good basketball in the Big East, and when you're Marquette, and normally you're a top dog in the conference, but when you're 1-7 in the conference, then no game, feels like an easy matchup for you anymore. So this is a big spot for them. They are in a must-win spot, in my opinion. I mean, again, I don't think Shaka Smart is coaching for his job. Again, he's had a lot of success at Marquette, but I mean, this is a massive spot for them. I mean it. At home, for the first time in forever, you go to Wintrust, you play DePaul, and you are outnumbered in terms of fans. And I know, again, you'd think that would be the case because it's DePaul's home arena, but that's just how much Marquette has dominated that again. Wisconsin, Chicago, or I guess Milwaukee, Chicago. Really, I guess assembly of fans. Regardless, I think Marquette wins this game at home. We still don't know if Jason Edwards is playing or not. He right now is marked as questionable. It was thought that he was going to play that game against, going into it, we thought he was going to play against Creighton. So from what I saw, and again, it's hard to get news on college basketball all the time, especially when it's not like Kansas or Duke or whatnot, right? Especially, again, like Providence is not an elite Big East team, and Jason Edwards is great, but, you're not going to see NBA figureheads talking about Jason Edwards because, maybe the G League's calling his name, but I don't really expect Jason Edwards, right, to be, a big-time NBA player. You can be great in college and obviously not have a future in the NBA. So my point being with all this, right, we're not going to see a lot of news on Jason Edwards. We've been following Jason Edwards from Vanderbilt, and obviously he was at North Texas prior to that. We've known how good he is, but you're not going to see the most news on if he's healthy or not because just doesn't really affect his draft stock because he's likely not going to be, we can say this, he's not going to be a first-round pick. So anyways, don't know if he's going to be playing or not. We thought he was going to play against Creighton. from what I've seen, he tried warming up. I saw, conflicting reports that he either just re-aggravated what he had, or it just felt like he wasn't good enough to play, so they sat him out for the Creighton game. I don't know. From what I'm guessing no tonight for Jason Edwards. That's what I'm gonna say. I'm guessing no. Again, he was supposed to play a couple days ago. He didn't. How much is gonna change in just 2 nights? Maybe he plays. My legitimate guess is no on Jason Edwards tonight. And they play Georgetown on Saturday. That would probably be my better guess. They're back at home for that game. It's on Saturday. That's when I would expect Jason Edwards to return. If he didn't play on Friday night, I don't think he's going to play tonight. So, and he suffered the injury prior, I think it was after the Xavier game. Xavier game on 2 weeks, or I guess a week and a half ago. So my guess is Jason Edwards is going to be back for the Georgetown game. Again, they got out of the Creighton game with a win without their best player, and they found ways, right? Vox had a massive night. They were, clutch 3 after clutch 3 from that team. Stephon Vox tried a bunch of threes, only hit 2. But regardless, he had 24 points, and he always found big buckets for that team. Got to the free throw line, their freshman out of Estonia. And again, there were players in that team that were able to make up for the loss of Jason Edwards. They still scored 93 points with Edwards not on the court. Again, Vox scored 24. You saw 18 out of Jameer Jones, 14 out of Ryan Mela. You got scoring. Can that translate to the road, though, is the question. And I don't believe so. We know how Providence plays. They get out and they run. They want to score, and they want to, again, use up as little of the clock as possible, which is great. Will that work on the road against Marquette? I don't know. Again, Marquette has not played great basketball yet this season, but I'm just waiting for it. And again, think about it. Backs against the wall, they need to win one here. This is a must-win spot for the Golden Eagles. You start 1-8 in Big East play, and now you got to go on the road to Indianapolis to Butler. And now, you're probably going to be 1-9. There's talent on the team. Chase Ross, Nigel James, Royce Parham. It's a Marquette team that they usually don't get guys transferring out. Usually, if you go to Marquette, you stay for 4 seasons, unless you get drafted. It's a solid program. Ben Gold on the team, too, right? They just haven't put together the pieces yet. I think this is their spot to do so. It's a mid-Providence team, potentially without their best player tonight. Yes, they're coming off a victory, but we had to pick a spot there, and we were right. Providence was an underdog, and they won, especially without Jason Edwards playing. But I think if you're Marquette, this is your opportunity to finally get one. At home, against a team that might be without their star player, I think Marquette takes it. Against a mid-Providence team, even with Jason Edwards, without him, they're even more mid. And yes, they found a way against Creighton, but that's just how the Big East works. That's just how college basketball works. I don't think they're able to put together, 2 straight wins without their best player playing. And again, I would expect Edwards to return for the Georgetown game on Saturday. So I'm going to go with the Marquette Golden Eagles to finally get one in the Big East. I'm going to go minus 115 for Marquette, picking up the victory at home from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. On now to our 4th best bet of the video as we go to the Southland Conference. And here are those aforementioned UT Rio Grande Valley Vaqueros. I never thought there would be a time and place where I would be betting on the Vaqueros to not just win a basketball game, but covering points, and not as underdogs, as favorites. Somehow we have found a spot, but it's actually a really good spot for them, guys. UT Rio Grande Valley is never going to have more momentum than they do right now. Why, you might ask? They beat McNeese at home. I don't know. McNeese usually loses 1 game every single year in conference play. I will say this team is nowhere near what they've been in years past. Are the Cowboys, are they still decent in the conference? 100%. Will they still win it? Yes, we saw them play Nichols and dominate. Sure, Stephen F. Austin might give them fits this season, but and they played a competitive game at McNeese earlier in the year, so we shall see about that. McNeese at Stephen F. Austin in early February is going to be a big matchup for the conference, but again, we still expect McNeese to win the entire thing. They'll be a first-round exit. I don't expect an upset in the tournament like they had last year against the Clemson Tigers. Anyways, though, what a win for the Vaqueros. A team that we've seen before just go through so many scoring droughts. They go play McNeese and they win 79-76. They dominate the first half of that basketball game, and McNeese really, makes a very late game comeback. They cut it to 1, but ultimately they fell 3 points short. They had a 3-point shot at the end of the game, but their comeback was unsuccessful. So the Vaqueros win and they get it done by 3 points. Now they have to cover 4.5 against the worst team in the conference. Yeah, sign me up for that one. Probably second worst team. I think Houston Christian's worse, but maybe East Texas A&M. I don't know. Those 3 are just all really bad. East Texas A&M Commerce, Houston Christian, and Southeastern Louisiana. But anyways, this is one of the bottom feeders in the Southland Conference. You're telling me that UT Rio Grande Valley can't beat this team by 5 points? Absolutely, they should. All the momentum you have right now, beating McNeese by 3, you should be able to dominate in this game. and we just need UT Rio Grande Valley to get out and score, because they have so many games where they just go through those long extended periods where they can't score. I think they should be able to do it tonight. I know so far in the Southland, they've only covered this line once at home, and that's against Incarnate Word. Hell, they have 3 wins in the Southland. Lamar, Incarnate Word, and McNeese, which Lamar's decent. Incarnate Word has their nights, obviously, with Davian Bailey and company and Stavetsky. McNeese, obviously, the best team in the conference, I guess, record-wise, is technically Stephen F. Austin, but I think everyone would probably still, for now, say it's McNeese. We'll see. I mean, they beat Incarnate Word at home by 13 points. I think they should be able to beat the worst team in the conference. I don't really need to look at history. I don't need to look at the games that they've played so far, because none of these teams are on the level of bad as Southeastern Louisiana, except for East Texas A&M, but they did play that game on the road. And again, my big point here is they're never going to have more momentum than they have right now after beating McNeese. This team is confident. I mean, it was a huge win for that squad. And they got out to such a hot start against McNeese, and that's just what carried them. Yes, they didn't play perfect basketball in the second half, but when you scored 46 points in the first half, then okay, you only need to score 30-something in the second to win the game, and that's really what has... I think the second halves have really been a big problem for the Vaqueros. We've seen it before this season. We see them to get out to a good enough start early in that basketball game to where the second half comeback doesn't really haunt us. But do we really expect, and do we even think the Southeastern Louisiana Lions can make a comeback? I don't think so. I don't really think that team has it in them. Look at a lot of their losses this year. They are by more than 5, and that's again the flip side of things here. So this is a 2-7 team, in Southland play. They started off Southland play with a home game against Northwestern State, who's not great. They lost by 8 points. They then went to Houston Christian and won. Lost to East Texas A&M by 1 point at home. Went to Incarnate Word, lost by 9 points. Played Stephen F. Austin, lost by 10 at home. Lamar victory at home by 8, and then a 12-point loss at McNeese, a 3-point loss at home against New Orleans, and then a 12-point loss at Corpus A&M, Corpus Christi. Corpus A&M, Texas A&M, Corpus Christi. They lost to the Islanders by 12 points. Back on the road here for UT Rio Grande Valley. I don't think they cover. I don't think so at all. Best player on Southeastern Louisiana is going to be Jeremy Elsley. Elsley's averaging 12 points per game. Sophomore out of Florida. Just put up 12 against Corpus Christi. He's all right. Isaiah Gaines averages 11. He put up 18 in back-to-back nights against New Orleans and against Corpus Christi. So there's that. This has been the biggest season of his career. Played 2 years for FAU, then a year at Radford, and now here he is. I think UT Rio Grande Valley is better. I didn't think I was going to be saying that this season, but again, after the McNeese win, why wouldn't I say that? They've got a couple guys who can score. Corey Cotton and Philip Brankovic are your 2 guys for the Vaqueros. Cotton averaging 12, only scored 9 in the McNeese win. This is a well-experienced player who, I guess, found a way out of VMI, which I don't know how you do that, whatever. Played at VMI, went to Jack State, and now here at Rio Grande Valley. And then you got the junior, I believe, international product, from Serbia, Filip Brankovic, who's averaging 12 points per game. Put 29 in the Incarnate Word victory, but your 2 leading scorers score 5 and 9 against McNeese, and yet they still found a way to win. Why, you may ask, or how, you may ask? Well, they got 17 points out of Marvin McGee, who averages 10. It was a big night for him. I mean, it's a player who has been around college basketball, senior year. He plays the 2 guard mostly for this squad. And he's averaged about 10 points per game every single year of his collegiate career. 3 over with C-Sub over again in Bakersfield for the Roadrunners, and now, obviously, with the Vaqueros. I got to go with the Vaqueros here. This feels odd, not going to lie. It feels really odd taking the Vaqueros minus 4.5, but you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to take UT Rio Grande Valley minus 4.5 points at home. If they're not able to do this, I don't know who they're ever able to cover 4.5 against. I know they haven't done it much this season, covering the 4.5, but you just beat McNeese, you have momentum, and you're playing a Southeastern Louisiana team who gets beat by this many points and more than this many points every single game that they play. So I got to go with the Vaqueros here. Give me UT Rio Grande Valley minus 4.5 points at home against the Southeastern Louisiana Lions. On to our final best bet of the video and going to the nightcap. Very random that this game is so late at night. Why is this at 9 p.m. over on the East Coast? I don't know, but here's our late game tonight. At 6 p.m., at least my time, we go to the CAA as the North Carolina A&T Aggies take on the Hampton Pirates. I'm going to go plus 5.5 on North Carolina A&T. I know they're 0-5 in the conference. Let's talk about that, though. They're not that bad. They've just played a lot of close games and lost, and I'm not impressed with the Hampton Pirates at all. The Aggies of North Carolina A&T, again, 0-5 in the conference, dead last in the CAA. Look at every single one of their games, though. They are relatively all competitive. A loss at home to UNC Wilmington, by far the best team in the conference, losing to the Seahawks by 9. A Northeastern loss by 11. Stony Brook lost on the road by 1 point. Home loss to the Elon Phoenix by 5. And then a loss on the road to the Tribe at William and Mary by 8. They've been very competitive, and they've just fallen a little bit short. Yes, their non-con was not the best, as all their wins are SWAC and MEAC teams, and I'm serious about that. SC State, Morgan State, NC Central, Maryland Eastern Shore are 4 of their 7 wins. The other 3 are Washington Adventist, UNC Greensboro, and Mid-Atlantic Christian. They've beaten a lot of bad teams. Don't need them to win here. We just need them to continue to do what they've done all year long, and that's just put up fights. So this isn't, again, totally just, oh, look at the way NC A&T has fought. No, again, Hampton has not been great this season. 8-10 as a whole, 2-3 in the CAA. Their victories are Stony Brook and Townsend at home. How did they win those games, though? 3 points against Stony Brook, 1 point against Townsend. And Hampton doesn't really score points. They are a very low-scoring, slow-paced team. So it's going to take a lot for them to just overcome North Carolina A&T and put up a bunch of points. This is a team earlier in the year that lost to Norfolk State. We had Norfolk State money line in that game, and it hit for us. And Norfolk State, I guess still the best team in the MEAC. I think they're better than Maryland Eastern Shore. I know they lost the first time out this year. I think the Spartans still probably win the conference, but I don't know. Maryland Eastern Shore is actually pretty good this season, so we'll see about that. But enough about the MEAC. Norfolk State actually has a win this season at home against Hampton, which normally you would not expect a MEAC team, even if they're the best team in the MEAC and against one of the worst teams in the CAA, you would not expect a MEAC win over the Coastal Atlantic Conference. But yet, that happened earlier in the season. And Hampton is at home in this spot, but they just don't score points. I mean, look at their last 3. Hell, look at every single one of their CAA games. 62-59 over Stony Brook. You win, but you score 60 points, and you only win by 3. Again, we have 5.5 here on the Aggies. Townsend by 1 point, 63-62. Okay, how about the UNC Wilmington game? You lose 49-45. And again, UNC Dub, Wilmington's great. Undefeated team in the CAA. I'm not telling you they're going to go undefeated throughout the entire year, but yeah, this team's really good. They're 17-2. We always talk about the Seahawks and just their ability to close games and that advantage they have in Wilmington, North Carolina. They have a true home court as a mid-major and one of the best home courts really out of any mid-major. I don't know how they lost at home to Howard, but if they didn't, they'd be 18-1 with their only loss being at Kent State, and we'd be talking at large potential for the Wilmington Seahawks. But anyways, Hampton loses to them by 3 points, but ultimately they score 45 points. Now, there's a weird outlier here. They went to Campbell and scored 72, but what's more odd about that is that Michael Ealy scored 42 points in that game, 43 points in that game. He had played 8 minutes against UNC Wilmington the game before and scored 0 points. I know he's coming off an injury, I believe, at that point, but what? I mean, he had multiple games this year where he just barely played. And then all of a sudden, I know, again, I believe he was coming off an injury at that point, but yeah, randomly dropped 43 out of nowhere for a player that at the time was averaging less than 10 points. So Ely, again, has that big, game potential, played 2 years at Siena, then went to Tulane last year, was hurt for most of the season, I believe, or redshirted, and then now is at Hampton. Actually, I know he did not redshirt, but didn't play most of the year. It is what it is. He's had some big games, again, 43 against Campbell, scored 14 in their last game at Charleston. We'll see how much of an impact he makes on this game. But Ely is their best guy. I just don't trust this team scoring at all. Again, they scored a lot against Campbell. Ely scores 43, but guys, the team scores 72. So they score less than 30 points other than just Ely. And they drop 70 against Charleston, but they lose the game by 4. Jaliki Gaines Wyatt's their leading scorer. He's their point guard, who's averaging 11, just dropped 17 in that game. Experienced guy, played 2 years over in the SWAC with Alcorn State. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like this team's tempo. They don't play fast. They don't score. They're not a great shooting team. I think the Aggies can stay in this game. And what do the Aggies do? They do score. I mean, again, I don't know if we want to compare common opponents here, but North Carolina A&T played UNC Wilmington. They lost just like Hampton did, but they scored 78 points against a really good Seahawks. Against a good UNC Wilmington Seahawks defense. And yeah, game was at North Carolina A&T, but I just think this game is going to be close. I think it's going to be. We saw this team go and play the Tribe on the road, lose by 8. Lost at Stony Brook on the road by 1 point. Okay, Hampton's not as good as William & Mary, by far. And Stony Brook, even though I don't think they're great, they're better than Hampton. Barely, but they're better than Hampton. Hampton is still a bottom-of-the-barrel team in the conference. They've barely gotten by in some games. They beat Stony Brook. They beat Townsend. Guys, this team has lost to multiple MEAC teams this year. They're 0-2 this season. Sorry, they're 1-2 against the MEAC. They lose to Howard and lose to Norfolk State. By the way, Howard came into Hampton and beat them. And yes, oddly enough, Howard has gone to UNC Wilmington and to Hampton and won games this season. What? And then Hampton somehow beats the best team in the conference, or one of the best teams in the conference, in Maryland Eastern Shore. I guess no, the Howard game was neutral site, wasn't it? That was the same tournament. My apologies. It was in DC. Anyways, I got to go with North Carolina A&T here. I have to. I think they can cover the spot. We talked about Ely's big game, by the way. Lewis Walker is a walking big game for North Carolina A&T, averaging 18.5 points per game. Just put up 33, though, in their last game against William & Mary. True freshman. He's going to score. He's a 3 for this team. Plays a small forward. He's been fabulous this year. That's a weird way to describe that. That was like zesty. I don't know why I said that. He's been phenomenal this year. This one weird adjective to use. He's been great, though. Lewis Walker's been phenomenal. True freshman. He's been playing really well. Trent Middleton just dropped 20 in the last game against William & Mary, but he averages 12 as well. Junior player, came from Ball State and Delaware, now here with North Carolina A&T. They've been without Lurin Walker for most of the year. Walker got injured, I think, in their 5th game of the season or 6th game of the season, but he was averaging 16 prior to his injury. But they've had a lot of time, again, to manage without him in the lineup, and a lot of the scoring and a lot of the winning, or at least competitiveness, because they haven't really won much, has been to do with Lewis Walker. So I got to go North Carolina A&T. I just don't see these two teams being that far off. I don't care if the game's at Hampton, because again, the Pirates just don't score enough points to get away from a team. Again, Ely just had 40-something points. You can't rely on that every single night. And even when he did score a bunch of points, the team only backed him up with 29 additional points beyond what he just did. So I repeated the same thing twice. It's okay. I'm going to take North Carolina A&T. I know they're 0-5 in the CAA, but they've been very competitive. I think they have a chance of winning this game outright, but I'm going to go with the 5.5 points with the Aggies to close the night. Weird late night spot in Virginia at 9 p.m. on CBS Sports Network, but it is what it is. I'm going to go with the Aggies covering on the road against the Pirates, again, plus 5.5 for North Carolina A&T. Folks, thank y'all for watching our college basketball best bets here on January 19th. If you have not yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you just good thing the picks. Make sure to join us tomorrow for more daily college basketball best bets. Folks, thank y'all for watching, and Mamba forever.